A woman tall as a mountain pine, dark hair flowing like water over shoulders that could carry the world. Eyes that seemed to hold secrets older than the desert itself. But dreams don't walk out of morning mist and stand 30 feet from your fence line. Yet, there she was. The woman from his dreams stood motionless beside the old oak tree, watching him with those exact eyes he'd seen behind his closed lids every single night. Every detail matched perfectly. The proud way she held her chin, the leather dress that moved like liquid shadow, even the small scar above her left eyebrow. Boone dropped the bucket he was carrying. Water splashed across his boots, but he couldn't look away. She shouldn't exist. People don't dream of strangers with perfect accuracy. But the Apache woman standing at the edge of his property wasn't just familiar. She was impossible. When their eyes met across the morning stillness, she tilted her head slightly, as if she recognized him, too. As if she'd been dreaming the same dreams. But that would mean the visions weren't just his mind playing tricks. That would mean something had been calling them to this exact moment, this exact place. And if that were true, then everything Boone thought he knew about dreams, about destiny, about the empty space in his life that no woman had ever filled was about to change forever. Boone wiped his hands on his worn pants and took a cautious step forward. The morning sun cast long shadows across, the dry ground between them. His heart hammered against his ribs like a caged animal. "You're on my land," he called out, his voice rougher than intended. She didn't move, didn't flinch, just stood there with that same steady gaze that had haunted his sleep. "I know," she replied, her voice carrying easily across the distance. It was deeper than he'd imagined, with an accent that wrapped around the English words like smoke. The simple response hit him harder than any explanation could have. She knew she was here, deliberately. Boone's mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she'd been watching his ranch. Maybe he'd glimpsed her from a distance months ago without remembering. And his sleeping mind had built dreams around a half-forgotten face. But that didn't explain why she was here now, why she was looking at him like she'd been searching for him as long as he'd been dreaming of her. The Apache woman took a single step closer. Her movement was fluid, controlled, like a mountain cat deciding whether to flee or strike. "My name is Ayanna," she said. Even her name felt familiar on his ears. Boone realized he'd been holding his breath. He forced himself to exhale slowly, to think beyond the thundering in his chest. "I'm Boone Carter. This is my ranch." The words sounded hollow, even to him. Property lines seemed meaningless when you were standing face to face with a person who'd stepped out of your dreams. Ayanna nodded once, as if his name confirmed something she already knew. "I've been looking for you," she said simply. The I. Admission sent a chill down Boone's spine. Looking for him? How could she be looking for someone she'd never met? Unless she had met him, unless there was something about these past 3 months that he didn't understand, something that would explain why the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen was standing on his land, talking to him like they were completing. A conversation that had started long before this morning. Ayanna's words hung in the air between them like morning fog that refused to lift looking for him. But why? And how could she know where to find a man she'd never met? Boone forced himself to move closer, each step deliberate and careful. The Apache woman didn't retreat, but he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her dark eyes tracked his every movement. "Looking for me?" he asked, stopping when only 10 feet separated them. This close? He could see the intricate beadwork on her leather dress, the way the morning light caught the bronze undertones in her skin. "Why?" Ayanna's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. For the first time since he'd spotted her, uncertainty flickered across her features. 3 months ago, my grandmother died, she said, her voice steady but strained. Before she passed, she told me about a man, a rancher, who lived alone by the creek, with hands scarred from honest work and eyes the color of winter sky. Boone glanced down at his weathered hands, the network of old cuts and calluses earned from years of fence mending and cattle handling. When he looked up, Ayanna was studying his face with an intensity that made his chest tighten. She said I would know him when I saw him, that he would be dreaming of me just as I had been dreaming of him. The bottom of Boone's stomach dropped. You've been having dreams, too. Every night for 3 months, Ayanna confirmed the same dream. A tall man with pale eyes, standing in a field of dry grass, reaching towards something he couldn't quite touch. Boone's throat went dry. In his dreams, he'd always been reaching for the dark-haired woman, watching her slip away just as his fingers brushed her skin. Your grandmother, he managed. How did she know about me? She saw many things before they happened. It was her gift. Ayanna's voice carried no mysticism, just the matter-of-fact tone of someone stating an undeniable truth. She told me I would find my path when I found the man from my dreams. Boone ran a hand through his hair, trying to make sense of what he was hearing. He didn't believe in prophetic dreams or mystical visions, but he couldn't deny that this woman matched his dreams with impossible accuracy. So you came looking for a stranger because of something your dying grandmother told you. I came looking for answers, Ayanna corrected. The dreams, they felt too real to ignore, like memories of something that hadn't happened yet. The way she described it sent a chill through Boone's bones. His own dreams had felt exactly the same, vivid beyond normal sleep, persistent beyond reason. What did she say would happen when you found me? Ayanna was quiet for a long moment, her gaze drifting toward the mountains in the distance. When she looked back at him, something had shifted in her expression, a vulnerability that hadn't been there before. She said, I would have to choose between 2 worlds. The old ways of my people and something new. Something that would change everything I thought I knew about my future. Boone felt the weight of her words settle over him like a heavy blanket. This wasn't just about dreams or coincidences. This was about 2 people whose lives were about to collide in ways that would reshape everything. And what do you think? He asked quietly. Ayanna took a step closer. Close enough that he could see the gold flecks in her dark eyes, smell the sage and leather scent that clung to her skin. I think some things are meant to happen, whether we understand them or not. Before Boone could respond, the sound of hoofbeats thundered from the direction of town, multiple horses riding hard toward his ranch. Ayanna's head snapped toward the sound, her entire body tensing like a bowstring, ready to snap. You need to go, Boone said urgently, recognizing the danger. An Apache woman alone with a white rancher would create exactly the kind of trouble neither of them could afford. But Ayanna didn't move. Instead, she looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Some things are worth the risk, she said softly. The hoofbeats were getting closer. Wait. Boone's voice cut through the tension like a blade. He stepped forward, placing himself fully between Ayanna and the 5 armed men. Sheriff, you know me. I've lived in this territory for 8 years, paid my taxes, helped my neighbors, never caused trouble for anyone. Sheriff Davidson hesitated, his hand still hovering near his pistol. You're asking me to arrest a woman who's committed no crime, Boone continued. Standing on a man's property isn't against the law. Talking to him isn't either. Depends on what kind of talking, Tom Bradley muttered, but some of the fire had gone out of his voice. The kind that's none of your business, Boone replied firmly. Pastor Williams cleared his throat. Boone, we're concerned about your soul. These people, they have ways of corrupting a Christian man's mind. My mind's just fine, Pastor, is it? Sheriff Davidson studied Boone's face carefully. Because from where I sit, it looks like you're willing to throw your life away for a woman you just met. The words hung heavy in the morning air. Boone felt Ayanna's presence behind him, solid and real, and realized the sheriff was right about one thing. He was willing to risk everything for her. The certainty of it should have terrified him. Instead, it felt like the first honest thing he'd done in years. "Maybe I am," Boone said quietly. The admission rippled through the group of men. Even Ayanna shifted behind him, surprised by his directness. Sheriff Davidson studied them both for a long moment, then slowly moved his hand away from his weapon. "You've got until sunset," he said finally. "Then she needs to be gone off your property, out of this territory." "And if we find her back here, you won't," Ayanna said simply. The men turned their horses and rode away, but not before Tom Bradley shot them, a look full of promises and threats. When the dust settled, Boone and Ayanna stood alone again in the sudden quiet. The morning sun had climbed higher, casting shorter shadows across the ranch yard. "You didn't have to do that?" Ayanna said softly. Boone turned to face her, studying the woman who had stepped out of his dreams and into his life with devastating completeness. "Yes, I did." He paused, searching for words that could explain what he barely understood himself. "For 3 months, I've dreamed of a woman like you. Not just how you look, but the way you stand, the way you speak, the way you make me feel like I've been waiting my whole life for this moment." Ayanna's eyes widened slightly at his confession. "I don't understand it either," Boone continued. "But I know that letting them take you would be the biggest mistake I ever made." "They called you a traitor," Ayanna pointed out. "In this territory, that word can get you killed. Then we'd better make sure these few hours count." Something shifted in Ayanna's expression. The careful distance she'd maintained since arriving seemed to dissolve. "My grandmother told me something else," she said, stepping closer. "She said, when I found you, I would have to decide if I was brave enough to leave everything I'd ever known behind. And I've been thinking about that choice for 3 months, but standing here now, seeing you risk everything for a stranger," she paused, her dark eyes searching his face. "Maybe it's not about leaving everything behind. Maybe it's about finding something worth keeping." Boone felt his heart hammer against his ribs. The space between them seemed to crackle with electricity. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying sunset gives us 8 hours. Ayanna's voice dropped to almost a whisper. 8 hours to figure out if what we're feeling is real or just the shadow of a dream. Before Boone could respond, a new sound reached them from the direction of the mountains. Drums, distant but unmistakable, carrying a rhythm that made Ayanna's entire body go rigid. "What is it?" Boone asked, though he already knew the answer would change everything. "My brother," Ayanna whispered, her face pale. "He's coming for me." The drumbeat continued, growing closer with each passing moment. The drumbeat echoed across the valley. Like distant thunder, each strike deliberate and measured, Ayanna's face had gone pale, but her posture remained straight and proud. "How long until he gets here?" Boone asked, his eyes scanning the mountain ridges where dust clouds were already visible against the morning sky. "An hour, maybe less." Ayanna's voice was steady, but Boone could hear the tension beneath it. "He's been tracking me since I left our camp 3 days ago. Why didn't you tell me you had people looking for you?" "Because I hoped I could make my choice and be gone before they found me." She turned to face him fully. "My brother Takakota doesn't understand why I left. To him, I'm betraying everything our family stands for by coming here." Boone felt a chill that had nothing to do with the morning air. "What will he do when he finds you here with me?" Ayanna was quiet for a moment, watching the approaching dust cloud grow larger. "He'll try to take me home," she said finally, "by force if necessary. And if I don't let him," the look she gave him was filled with something between gratitude and sorrow. "Then, he'll kill you. It's not personal, it's duty. In his eyes, you're a white man who has stolen his sister." Boone ran a hand through his hair, processing the gravity of their situation. "So we have an hour to figure out how to prevent a war, or we have an hour to say goodbye," Ayanna replied softly. The words hit him like a physical blow. After waiting his entire life to find someone who made him feel complete, the idea of losing her after just one morning seemed unbearable. "There has to be another way," he said, moving closer to her. "You said your grandmother told you that you'd have to choose between two worlds. Maybe this is that choice." "It is," Ayana confirmed. "But choosing your world means leaving everything I've ever known, my family, my people, my entire life, and staying means leaving this, leaving us." The word hung between them, heavy with possibility and loss. Boone reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, he took her hand in his. Her skin was warm, her fingers strong and calloused from a life of hard work. "I know it's crazy," he said quietly. "We've known each other for less than 2 hours, but when I look at you, I see my future. Not just the dreams, something real, something worth fighting for." Ayana's eyes searched his face as if trying to memorize every detail. "In my culture, when two people are meant to be together, the spirits send signs," she said. "Dreams, visions, ways to find each other across impossible distances. Your grandmother's wisdom, her final gift to me," Ayana squeezed his hand gently. "She told me I would know my true path when I found a man brave enough to risk everything for love and foolish enough to think love could conquer the hatred between our peoples." Boone felt his heart race. "Am I that man? You stood between me and 5 armed men. You called me a lady when they called me a savage. You're willing to face my brother to protect something that exists only in dreams and hope." She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Yes, Boone Carter, you are that man." The drum beat suddenly stopped. In the silence that followed, they could hear hoofbeats approaching at a gallop. Not from town this time. From the mountains. "He's here," Ayana whispered. A single rider appeared at the crest of the hill overlooking Boone's ranch. Even at a distance, the man's imposing figure was unmistakable. Tall, broad-shouldered, sitting his horse with the kind of natural authority that commanded respect and fear in equal measure. Takakota had found his sister, and he was not alone. 2 more riders emerged from the trees behind him. Then 3 more, a full war party, armed, and ready for whatever resistance they might encounter. 6 men, Boone observed, his hand instinctively moving toward the rifle propped against his porch rail. 6 warriors, Ayana corrected. Men who have never failed to bring home what they came for. The riders began their descent toward the ranch, moving with the unhurried confidence of predators who knew their prey had nowhere to run. Takakota rode into the ranch yard like a force of nature, tall, lean, with the kind of presence that seemed to bend the air around him. His black hair hung in 2 long braids decorated with eagle feathers, and war paint marked his high cheekbones in red and yellow streaks. He reined his horse to a stop 20 feet from where Boone and Ayana stood, his dark eyes taking in every detail of the scene before him. The 5 warriors behind him spread out in a loose formation, their hands resting casually on their weapons. "Sister," Takakota said in heavily accented English, his voice carrying the weight of command, "you have wandered far from home." "I came where I needed to come," Ayana replied, her chin lifted defiantly. Takakota's gaze shifted to Boone, studying him with the intensity of a hunter evaluating prey. "And this is the white man who has stolen your senses." "No one has stolen anything," Ayana said firmly. "I made my own choice." "Choice?" Takakota's voice carried bitter amusement. "You call running away in the night a choice? You call abandoning your family, your people, your blood, a choice?" Boone felt the tension crackling between the siblings and recognized the pain beneath Takakota's anger. This wasn't just about tribal loyalty. This was about a brother losing his sister. "She's free to make her own decisions," Boone said carefully. Takakota's attention snapped to him like a striking snake. You speak of freedom, white man? Tell me about freedom when your people have driven us from our lands, slaughtered our buffalo, penned us up like cattle. That's not what this is about, Boone replied, keeping his voice level, isn't it? Takakota dismounted with fluid grace, his hand moving to the knife at his belt. My grandmother filled Ayana's head with foolish dreams about bridging two worlds. But there is no bridge, rancher. There is only war. Your grandmother was wise, Ayana interjected. She saw what you refused to see. That hatred will destroy us all unless someone has the courage to choose love instead. Love? Takakota spat. You think this man loves you? Or does he love the idea of taming a wild Apache woman, making her into something safe and civilized? The accusation stung because Boone could hear the kernel of truth in it. How could he prove that his feelings were real when he'd known Ayana for mere hours? I don't want to change her, Boone said quietly. I want to build a life with her, whatever that looks like. Pretty words, Takakota replied. But words are wind. When his neighbors turn against him for harboring a savage, when the government comes, asking questions when loving my sister costs him everything he owns, then we will see how strong his love really is. Boone felt Ayana's hand slip into his, her fingers intertwining with his own. The simple gesture sent strength flowing through him. Then test me, he said, meeting Takakota's fierce gaze directly. Name your terms. A dangerous smile crossed Takakota's face. My terms are simple, white man. Prove you're worthy of my sister's sacrifice. How? Takakota drew his knife, the blade gleaming in the morning sun. Fight me. If you win, she stays. If you lose, he shrugged. The dead have no claim on the living. No, Ayana said sharply, stepping between them. I won't let you turn this into bloodshed. The choice is no longer yours. Sister? Takakota replied. You set this path in motion when you came to this place. Boone looked at the knife in Takakota's hand, then at the 5 warriors watching with predatory interest. He was a decent fighter, but he was no match for a trained Apache warrior. But this wasn't really about fighting, he realized. This was about proving something to Takakota, to Ayana, and to himself. I accept, Boone said. Ayana whirled to face him, her eyes wide with shock and fear. Boone, no, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. He cupped her face gently in his hands, memorizing the feel of her skin, the depth of her dark eyes. I understand that some things are worth dying for. And I understand, Takakota said, raising his knife, that today we find out if love is stronger than steel. The warriors formed a circle, trapping Boone and Ayana in the center with Takakota. There was no escape now, no backing down. The fight that would determine their future was about to begin. Boone had no knife, no weapon except his bare hands and whatever courage he could muster. Takakota circled him like a wolf, the blade gleaming in his grip while the 5 Apache warriors watched in stone silence. You could have chosen pistols, Takakota said, his voice carrying dark amusement. Given yourself a fighting chance. This isn't about fighting, Boone replied, turning to keep the warrior in sight. It's about proving something. What? That I'd rather die with honor than live as a coward. Takakota's eyes narrowed. Pretty words from a man about to bleed. The Apache warrior struck without warning, his knife slicing through the air where Boone's chest had been a heartbeat before. Boone twisted away, feeling the blade whistle past his ribs. He was fast, but Takakota was faster. The warrior spun and struck again, this time catching Boone's forearm and opening a line of red across his skin. Blood dripped to the dusty ground. First blood to me, Takakota announced. But you didn't run. Interesting. Boone wiped the blood on his pants, never taking his eyes off his opponent. I'm not running anywhere, even knowing you'll lose. Especially knowing I'll lose. The answer seemed to surprise Takakota. He paused in his circling, studying Boone with new interest. "You're not what I expected, rancher." "What did you expect? A man who would try to buy my sister or steal her or break her spirit until she became something manageable." Takakota's grip on the knife shifted slightly. "Instead, I find someone willing to die for her freedom to choose." Boone felt something shift in the warrior's stance, though the danger remained real and immediate. "She's not property to be bought or stolen," Boone said. "She's a woman with her own mind, her own heart, her own dreams." "Dreams," Takakota repeated, his voice carrying something that might have been sadness. "My grandmother filled her head with dreams of two worlds becoming one. But dreams don't stop bullets, rancher. They don't prevent wars." "No," Boone agreed, "but they give us something worth preventing wars for." Takakota struck again, faster than thought. This time, Boone was ready, not to fight back, but to protect. Instead of dodging away, he stepped forward, accepting the blade between his ribs, rather than let it find his heart. The knife slid into his side, sending fire through his entire body. But he was close now, close enough to grab Takakota's wrist and look directly into the warrior's eyes. "I accept whatever you decide," Boone gasped through the pain. "But know this, I love your sister. Not because she's Apache, not despite it, because she's brave enough to dream of something better than hatred." Takakota's face was inches from his own, and Boone could see the conflict warring in those dark eyes. "You're bleeding, white man. I know. The blade is near your lung. I could push deeper and end this. I know. Then why aren't you afraid?" Boone managed a pained smile. "Because she taught me that some things are worth dying for, and some people are worth living for." For a long moment, the two men stayed frozen in that tableau. The Apache warrior with his blade buried in the white rancher's side. The rancher with his hand wrapped around his opponent's wrist, neither of them moving. Then Ayana's voice cut through the morning air. "Stop." She stepped into the circle, her face pale, but determined. "Enough blood has been spilled in the name of protecting me. I won't watch the two men I love most destroy each other." Takakota's eyes widened at her words. "Sister, you are my blood. Takakota, my family, my heart." She looked at him with infinite sadness and love. "But he is my choice, my future, my dream made real, and if I can't accept that choice..." Ayana straightened, and in that moment, she looked exactly like the woman from Boone's dreams. Proud, strong, unbreakable. "Then you'll lose me forever," she said simply. "Because I'd rather live one day as myself than a lifetime as someone else's idea of who I should be." Takakota stared at his sister for what felt like an eternity. Then slowly, he withdrew the knife from Boone's side. Blood seeped through Boone's shirt as Takakota slowly pulled the blade free. The rancher swayed but remained standing, his hand pressed against the wound in his side. "You fought without a weapon," Takakota said quietly, studying the blood on his knife. "You accepted defeat rather than run. You chose her freedom over your own life." He looked up, meeting Boone's pain-filled eyes. "These are the actions of a warrior, not a coward." Ayana moved to Boone's side, supporting him with her strong arms. "You're hurt. I'll live." Boone managed, though the world seemed to be tilting slightly. Takakota wiped his blade clean and sheathed it with deliberate ceremony. "In my people's tradition, when a man proves his worth through blood and courage, he earns the right to speak for himself." "What does that mean?" Ayana asked. "It means," Takakota replied, his voice heavy with something between resignation and respect, "that you have chosen a man worthy of the choice." The words hung in the morning air like a prayer answered. Ayana's grip on Boone tightened, and he could feel her trembling with relief. "You'll let us be together." she whispered. Takakota was quiet for a long moment, his eyes moving from his sister to the man she loved and back again. Our grandmother was a wise woman, he said finally. She saw farther than the rest of us. If she said this path would lead to something better than war, he shrugged, the gesture carrying years of pain and hope. Then perhaps it's time to trust her wisdom. He turned to address his warriors, speaking rapidly in Apache. Boone couldn't understand the words, but he could see the surprise and some resistance in their faces. Takakota's voice grew firmer, more commanding, until one by one the men nodded their acceptance. What did you tell them? Boone asked. That my sister has found her path, that we will honor her choice and protect it with our lives if necessary. And they agreed. They are my men. They follow my lead. Takakota's smile was grim but genuine. Besides, they saw you take a knife, rather than strike an unarmed woman's brother. That kind of honor speaks to them. Ayanna stepped away from Boone long enough to embrace her brother, speaking to him in their native language. Their conversation was brief but intense, full of love and loss and acceptance. When they separated, both siblings had tears in their eyes. What happens now? Boone asked. Takakota mounted his horse, his warriors following suit. Now you heal from that wound. Heal from. You marry my sister properly. You build the life she's willing to sacrifice everything to have, and if the townspeople cause trouble, then they'll discover that Ayanna may have chosen your world, but she still has family in the old one. Family that doesn't forget its obligations. The threat was subtle, but unmistakable. Any harm that came to Ayanna would bring consequences. Thank you, Boone said simply. Takakota nodded once, then looked at his sister. Be happy, Ayanna. Grandmother's dreams have cost us both too much for anything less. The Apache war party rode away as suddenly as they'd arrived, disappearing into the mountain, mist like ghosts returning to legend. Boone and Ayanna stood alone in the ranch yard, holding each other as the sun climbed toward noon. The blood on his shirt was already drying, the wound painful, but not dangerous. So, Ayanna said softly, her head resting against his uninjured shoulder. What do we do now? Boone looked at the woman, who had stepped out of his dreams and into his life, bringing with her the promise of everything he'd never dared hope for. Now we find out if love really is stronger than the world's hatred, he replied. We build something new, something worth all the sacrifice it took to get here. Together. Together. As they walked toward the ranch house to tend his wound, Ayanna glanced back at the mountains where her old life waited. Then forward toward the uncertain future they would create side by side. The dreams had ended. Reality, beautiful, difficult and full of possibility, had begun. Months later, Boone Carter and Ayanna were married under the old oak tree where they'd first met. The ceremony was small, witnessed only by a traveling preacher and the vast sky that had brought them together. Sheriff Davidson and the townspeople kept their distance, but they kept the peace as well. Perhaps because they'd heard rumors of Apache warriors watching from the hills. Perhaps because even hatred sometimes grows tired and seeks rest. But mostly Boone believed because love, real love, has a way of making itself known to anyone willing to see it. If you enjoyed this story, click the video on your screen now to watch another unforgettable tale where destiny and courage collide in ways you never expected. Don't forget to subscribe and consider a super chat to help us keep bringing you more stories like these.